Okay, today I'm going to show you how to multiply complex numbers. Last class we discussed the imaginary number unit I. Imaginary I stands for square root of -1. Okay, we learned that last class. And if I was squared, if it was I squared, if you want to know what I squared is, you could square both sides of the equation. If you square this side, it'll cancel the square root. So I squared just equals -1. We're going to use those concepts again today. The first problem we're going to do is a multiplication problem. It should be printed on your note sheet there so you could copy and follow along. You can pause the video as needed. We're going to learn how to multiply complex numbers out. You need to use the distributive property. First, you multiply 4i times -6. That'll give you -24i. Then you take 4i times I. That'll be 4i squared. Okay, now we're going to use our information at the top. We got an I squared. I squared equals -1. So this I squared in the problem, anytime you get I squared, you can replace it with -1. Okay, so I have -24i plus 4 times -1. Okay, so 4 times -1 is -4. And I'm finally done. Final answers are usually written in A plus BI form. That's the format for how complex numbers are written. And A is like the real part of the answer, so -4 needs to go first, then -24i. And then the problem is done. Okay, another problem similar to that, another multiplication problem that you should see printed on your note sheet next, has two sets of parentheses. 9 minus 2i times -4 plus 7i. Again, we're going to do our distributive property. So that would give me, take 9 times -4, get -36. Then you take 9 times 7i, which would give you 63i. Then you multiply the inside terms. There's a negative times a negative there, so you get plus 8i. And -2i times 7i would be -14i squared. Okay, here's an I squared term again. So again, if you refer up above, I squared equals -1. So that'll be a -1 again, which would end up giving us a positive 14. Okay, then we can combine things. There's a -36 in the problem, and we have this positive 14. So then we can just add those up, and we would get -22. And then our middle terms, in the middle of the problem, there was a 63i and 8i. If we add those together, we'll get 71i. And this one is it's in the A plus BI form. We have the real number and the imaginary number 71i at the end. That one's done. Okay, we can also continue using complex numbers to solve equations, to find the roots, to find the zeros of a quadratic equation. So I could have a problem. Next on your note sheet, you'll see 2x squared minus 11 equals -47. Okay, so it's asking you to solve the equation, find the zeros of the equation, find the x-intercepts. You want to solve for x. So I'll highlight that x squared in the problem. We're trying to solve for x. So we need to get x alone. We need to add the 11. That'll give me -36. Then we need to divide by 2. So x squared equals -18. Then we need to cancel out the x squared by taking the square root. We don't want squared. We want to take the square root to cancel the squared. So we get x equals plus and minus. So we talked about this last week. when you take the square root, you need to write plus and minus. You'll get one positive answer and one negative answer. And we need to break apart and simplify the square root of negative 18. 9 times 2 is 18. It's one way to break apart 18, 9 times 2. I like using the number 9 because I know 9 is a perfect square. The square root of negative 1 is I. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 2 stays in the box. I can't solve that part. You notice I'm circling things I can solve. I'm circling things that I know the answer to. So my final answer is plus and minus 3i square root of 2. So one answer is positive 3i square root of 2. The other answer is negative 3i square root of 2. And finally, one more problem on your note sheet is about finding the zeros of the function. And they write the problem in function notation. They write f of x equals x squared plus 7. It says find the zeros, so you need to equal the equation to 0. The f of x would become a 0. That's like a y. You want to make it like y equals 0. So it's x squared plus 7 equals 0. Subtract 7 to try to solve and get the x alone. Take the square root to get rid of the squared on the x. So it's x equals plus and minus. Okay, now negative 7. 1 times 7 is 7. Okay, so it's just like negative 1 times 7. The square root of negative 1 is I. And square root of 7, the 7 will stay in the box. We cannot simplify that anymore. So my answer is x equals plus and minus I square root of 7. So the answer is I square root of 7 and negative I square root of 7. So use those examples to help you do your assignment today.